So here we are. We're going to talk about what if me and Steven co-produced Rock and Roll Over, and Rob from Right Between the Eyes is going to be along to try to be the voice of reason. All right. So we're in the studio, Steven. And Gene and Paul, and they just came in, and they are coming off of Destroyer. They got this hot shot producer, and they thought he was going to he is going to make an album that would separate them from other bands, and he did. But at the same time, there was a lot of stuff on that album that kind of backlashed in the face of the band, because the fans was left not really being able to understand. They couldn't understand songs like Sweet Pain or Great Expectations, and so a song with a ballad on it that didn't take off right away, but it did blow up. Eventually, it blew up. So they're coming back into the studio. They've not been on tour very long, and they're coming back into the studio, and they've hired me and you to help them make a rock and roll album that is going to return them to the roots of what the fans wanted, but also keep moving in the direction of being better musicians, being better songwriters, being better this, that, and everything.
Moving your sound forward.
Right. So we have a big shadow to stand in, and standing in the shadow in the footsteps of Eddie Kramer, and standing in the shadow of that. But Eddie Kramer did a lot on this album. He engineered it, he produced it, and he maybe did a little. He was a little too much, having to do a little too much, was spread a little too thin. So the question that I lay out there first, and we'll throw this around to everybody. The question I lay out there first was, on a scale of 1 to 10, not Kiss, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how did Eddie Kramer do producing this album? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, how did he do producing this album, in your opinion? Whoever's mouth ain't full.
I was going to go ahead and start and get myself out of the way. I remember when we were doing our listening of this album back in the day, and I feel like a lot of the Kiss in this era suffers from it, and it may just be something that I'm used to, be like the kind of music that I listened to growing up and stuff. But this era of Kiss, the guitars always just sound like very tin and thinny and weak to me. And that's one, like, overall, I guess, production aspect that I think I would have to fix with it.
Okay.
But I'm sure there would probably be more examples specifically on songs. I think that they do a good job of trying and recapture the image of being like a rock band that is about what Kiss is known for, what it's being about, rather than a, borderline concept album.
Right. So you think they went back to rocking?
I feel like it, yeah.
So how do you think that Eddie did?
I think he did, coming off the heels of what Ezrin did off of Destroyer, was kind of like a Herculean task. Like, you got to make The Godfather Part 2 coming off of The Godfather, which that's not a good example. That's coming off of Star Wars. You've got to make the sequel to Star Wars, since this all fits in the same relative time frame. I think he did a really good job. I think the best compliment you could probably pay him on this is that he didn't do Destroyer Part 2 that much like Kiss does through their whole career. They decided to pivot. They didn't necessarily go a different direction. They just backed up and said, okay, we probably would have traveled down this road after Dress to Kill, but now that we have all this foundation from Alive and Destroyer under us, we can now have a better polished vehicle to drive down the road. Because I think they really weren't thinking about producing the albums the way that they had been with Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, and Dressed to Kill. So I think just because of that, Kramer got them focused and they started to really figure out what type of band they wanted to be coming off of Destroyer, which they could have gone completely in a more Pink Floyd direction coming off of Destroyer. But I think that where they came back to the brass tacks, so to speak, and go, okay, we're a hard rock band that's dirty. I think they
Right.
refined that with this album. So I think Kramer probably gets maybe not a 10, but like a 9 for bringing Kiss back to center.
I really like what you said, and it was what I felt, even though I didn't really know I felt it. This to me, if you picked Destroyer up and pulled it out of the the catalog, and the gap closed up to Alive coming off, you have Rock and Roll Over, or you have Dressed to Kill, Alive, Rock and Roll Over. Although I've often said that to me, Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun are sister albums, so much to the point that
Mhm.
being a Kiss fan of 45 plus years, there are sometimes I'll be driving down the road and a song will come on my radio, and I'll be like, now is this off of Love Gun or is this off of Rock and Roll Over? I get them confused a lot, especially when it comes to
Yeah.
Gene's songs like Christine 16. Is it on Love Gun? Is it on Rock and Roll Over?
Mhm.
Calling Dr. Love. Is it on? I know all the time. It takes me seeing something like this to remind me that Calling Dr. Love come off Rock and Roll Over. Calling Dr. Love, you could have picked it up and slapped it on Love Gun, and it would have fit perfectly. It has the same sound, the same
I
feel,
agree.
the same vibe. Although some people say that Rock and Roll Over has a little bit better sound than Love Gun does. I mean, I'm kind of into other camp. I think that, and I know this is not popular opinion, but I think Love Gun actually sounds a little better than Rock and Roll Over to me. But that's not sliding Rock and Roll Over either, because I think these are two near perfect albums, and the band was really, there's only one song on Love Gun that gives it the bad blemish that it gets, and we both know what it is. We all three know
Dun,
what it is.
dun, 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 dun,
Da-na-na,
dun.
skip,
Skip.
da-na-na, skip. Um, love you, Rick. We know you love that song, but to me, you're exactly right. This is the next step they would have took had they not had a concept album like Destroyer.
I think the biggest thing is, I think like I was hopefully trying to eloquently say earlier, I think coming off of an album that was so polished and whatever, that it was just this really glossy, shiny, overly produced album. I wonder if somebody like a Gene or maybe even Paul that was like, we need to get back to being dirty, filthy in a way. Like, let's go in, let's bang it out, let's knock it out, let's not
Mhm.
overly produce it. Let's just be a bunch of guys in a room with our guitars and our amps and our drums and just play. And I think that's what this album
Right.
is. But like you were saying, they wouldn't have got to this album without Destroyer.
Right. Okay. So overall, what we would do at this point in time is we would tell Gene and Paul, well, we can make it a rock album, but let's not make it to where it's not enjoyable on your high five, where we have some lows, we have some guitars that are maybe a little more up in the mix or a little thicker, and not so thin in a lot of ways. um but now song choices and track listings. um are you aware of all the demos that was out during this time?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
Now, could
what's
I
like,
recall all of them? No, I can't.
yeah, there was a lot of demos that was out during this time. So do you feel like that there is any song that they should have not put on this album and maybe replaced with a demo?
For me, I don't think so. I think the songs that wound up on the album are the correct songs to be here.
Mhm.
I just wouldn't have repeated one of them on another album later down the line.
Right. There are songs there were demos that was running around during this time that ended up on an album. They ended up on either um, somebody's solo album,
Mhm.
or they ended up on the second album after this one, the Love Gun. They ended up on that,
Yep.
uh, rehashed in different ways. I'm perfectly okay and happy with every song that's on this album. I don't really have a song on this album that I'm like, man, I wish they would have not put this on there.
Yeah.
I have one.
Not for me either.
I have one that I could have done without, and on our show when we did the 9, it was the one that we unanimously cut off the album.
One you cut. Okay.
Yeah.
So track one, I Want You. I like that this is the opener of the album. I think it's a great way that they play with your head a little bit. That they've got this album that is destined, that's going to be this rocker album, and they started off with acoustic guitar. And Paul just, in the morning I raise my head, and just singing all soft, and then the only thing that I don't like is I've never liked the way Paul says "is" on this.
We had to have said something about it before.
We
I can't
did.
recall
We
now,
did.
though.
And the thing I want out of life is. It's just like, I love the way he does it on live too.
Live,
That,
yeah,
where he yells it. That is. I love that. But yeah, it just always sounds. I don't know. But once it starts, the way it starts in, and then the backgrounds, I want you. It's, you can run, you can hide, but you never get away. I mean, that when it gets into that part of the song, the little pre-chorus, treat you right, girl, you know I would. That whole vibe that they're doing there, I think it's great. I love the way Peter's drums sounds on this. It's like they've got like some plate vibe that it's a real quick reverb or real quick, and it's not very big and bombastic, but like when he hits a tom, you almost hear it like it hit 2 times, like doo-doo. Like it's a real fast, like reverb plate that comes back on it. But so, like I said, they were apparently recorded in a bathroom, and they communicated with him through. And bathrooms have good acoustics. I mean, they really do. But they communicated with him via closed circuit television, so it was like a real interesting process because they're recording up in this theater area, and he's down in the bathroom on the drum set.
I can't imagine the wiring that goes into that. Like having
Yeah.
to run those cables. Oh,
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah. So I Want You. I think it's great. I think it sounds good. I'm just gonna go ahead and say this here so it's out front for me, and then you guys can throw in what you think. Pretty much this whole album, I have the same feeling on the sound of the guitars, the sound of the drums, because it doesn't really change. It's almost like they recorded all these songs.
They just hit like default mix and
Yeah. It's
Right.
like they did not change any of the tones or anything like that. Now they did change the sliders, sometimes too late, and sometimes too abruptly. We've talked about that in the video that we made. It was one of our biggest beefs with this whole album, is that the mixing is not that great. the mixing. I'm not saying the mix. The mix itself is pretty good. You hear everybody pretty good and everything. It's just when you need to slide somebody up or down for a solo or an instrument that was in the background, and now it needs to become a predominant instrument. It's like it's here and then it's here, rather than just kind of a gradual push. And we'll talk about that song in particular. I know we mentioned it in our video that we did, but we'll talk about that song in particular when we get to it. But I think I Want You is great. I think it's a great song to open the album with. It's a classic. I actually like this version for the most part better than the live version because I don't get the whole whoa 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 whoa. I don't get that on this version. Short, short and sweet. Short and sweet is what I like. So, what do you guys think about this? It's a Paul Stanley write, so he wrote it all by himself. So, what do you guys think about "I Want You"? The song itself, the way it sounds on here. I'm gonna eat a breadstick while y'all talk.
Okay, that's a good point.
All right.
I think it's probably you mentioned it's an interesting choice for it to be an acoustic thing at like the very beginning of the quote unquote like rocker album or anything like that. But you know, there was a bit of softer songs on Destroyer and things like that. Maybe it was a way to set up to subvert people's expectations. Like, oh, you know, Kiss is just doing this acoustic soft stuff again, and then all of a sudden it just like whammo bamos into the good stuff, and then the rest of the album, for the most part, you're in for a pretty high energy ride.
Yeah, kind of like a gotcha.
Yeah, like a gotcha.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What do you think?
I've always dug the song. What we what we said in our review for what I said was I feel like this album is very indicative of the album cover, with it there being really no top, bottom, middle. It's just a never-ending circle. I think between track 1 and track 10, either one of those two songs could have started the album, and the flow of the album continues all the way through. So I actually lean, as much as I love "I Want You," I actually think "Making Love" might have been a great opener for the album, and put "I Want You" as the last track.
Yes.
That being said, I think it's a cool way to start the album, of going, just coming off of Destroyer, and you get the next Kiss album and you're waiting for that next Detroit Rock City. And I'm sure there were some people that were like, what is this? And like you guys said, you get that whammo
Yeah.
hit and go, oh, okay, I get what they're doing. That being said, I think "Making Love," I would have probably started the album with that. But neither here nor there, "I Want You" is a great song. I can't fault him for putting it as track 1.
Okay, so track number 2 is "Take Me" with Paul Stanley and Sean Delaney. Very interesting song. It's got like it's got a beat in it that has never really been in a Kiss song, if you think about it. And if somebody can point one out on a song before this, but that whole bum 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 bum, that very staccato, you know, just changing back and forth between chords, that dun 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 dun, and then, you know, Kiss has become a little, you know, I mean, they were more dangerous, seemed like, in the first era, pre Alive 2, and becoming a little less dangerous as the crowds get younger and younger, but starting a song off with "Put Your Hand in My Pocket, Grab Onto My Rocket."
A little tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and they're known for that. They're known for being, you know, the king of innuendos, both Gene and Paul both, and even Ace, you know, "Baby Wants It Bad, She Wants a Rocket Ride." Shock Me to, you know, the song to come has a lot of innuendos in it itself. I like "Take Me," and I think this is, you know, even though this isn't a slight at Paul, but you can almost tell that Paul had an external influence. I don't know exactly what Sean did. I know he was deeply embedded in the band and helped them with everything. I mean, Sean Delaney was literally the 5th member of Kiss. I mean, he literally was. I don't know of a Kiss song that has this kind of styling to the way the music is phrased, and like, especially during the riff. The riff that's during the verse, because the whole time Paul's singing, he's just singing normal, like "Put your hand in my pocket, grab them to my rocket." He's just singing. You could put any riff under that. You could have put under that. But instead, you had dun 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 dun. You had a weird riff under it. So
Yeah, and you
I
get that
think-
little play with Ace too, that little da na 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 na
I
na
like,
where
Yeah.
I like all
that-
the riff stuff in this
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Take Me, I think, like you said, Take Me could have very well started the album. It could have been the last song on the album. It could have been the first song on the second side. It's that rotation you talked about. So but yeah, I like Take Me. I think it's a great song. I think it's a good place for it to be in second. But it could have been anywhere. It really could have.
Yeah, it is beginning to kind of look that way. Although I'm looking a little bit further down here in the album, and I'm like, I don't know if I'd start with that one.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is a pretty good song, and maybe kind of in a response of like something like Calling Dr. Love starting the album off. Like I feel like this is another really solid way to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's a very sort of more high energy way to be able to start. Again, my gripes with the guitar production is kind of going to remain the same throughout. Although there are a couple solos that get stuff pretty good with good tones and effects and stuff. But if seeing where this is, I'm fine with it being on that side. I mean, if we're speaking, I guess, in record terms, on the first side of the second track of the first side.
Yeah. Yep, it's the second track of the first side. Yeah.
So other than that, there's no other big major production things I think I'd make changes of.
Mm-mm.
What about you? Take Me.
I've always loved this track. I know Nick on our show is a huge fan of this song. This was one that Kiss pulled out back in '94 at like Foundations Forum with Eric and Bruce, where a lot of people were like, "Holy crap, they're playing, Take Me." I just think this song has got like you said, there's an energy about this song that they haven't done something like this previously.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, that's like you mentioned the top of the show, coming off of the album that they just did. I think this is Paul and Sean going, what can we do that's different, that's not the traditional thing that we would do, where we can have a different phrasing of the guitar, but it's not totally matching what we're singing. I think this is the perfect example of them thinking outside of the box, and they write this really groove oriented song. Even Peter's playing is very tasteful on this.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's all
everybody talks about Peter's playing on Destroyer. I think Peter did some of his best playing. He did good playing on Destroyer. I think he did some of his best playing on Dress to Kill, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun. Those three albums, Peter is just like, he's off the chain.
Well, and I was watching the video where me and you did like a jam session like just a couple weeks ago. And, whenever I was watching you play, the statement that you had made to me that a lot of people give Peter a hard time about how his drumming. And I was like, that, that's what I was watching you do, whether you were embellishing a little bit or not. I'm like, that looks impressive to me.
Right.
So I find it kind of old that people try and bag on his drumming so much.
Yeah. Peter was the perfect drummer for Kiss when Kiss was during this era.
Mm-hmm.
When they moved into the 80s, Peter probably would not so much he was not an 80s metal drummer, but a good old 70s rock and roll drummer. Yeah, it was Peter all day long. So that brings us down to Gene's first track on the album, Calling Dr. Love. And he wrote this entirely. One thing I love about Calling Dr. Love, I love Ace's solo. Ace's solo on Calling Dr. Love is so weird. It's all over the place. It doesn't really have any structure, but it is just so weird. It fits it perfectly. I kind of always wondered what would have happened if Sean Delaney would have, because I know that Sean Delaney did a lot of work on Double Platinum. What if Sean Delaney would have produced this album? What could have that sounded like? I mean, I guess, we'll never know. I mean, he did.
Right.
No, Sean Delaney, he produced Gene's album, didn't he?
I think it sounds like if we were the producers of this album, we would just go hire Sean Delaney.
Yeah.
I think so far. Yeah.
Yeah. Go hire Sean Delaney. Yeah, because I think Peter wanted Sean Delaney to produce his album. And
he pissed him off.
and he pissed him off, and then Gene snatched him up, and then he got Vinny Poncha to do it for him. So Calling Dr. Love, I think it's in a perfect place on the third part. I don't like to go too far along with either Gene or Paul. In this point in the time, we had a third voice on this album. So Calling Dr. Love, I think it's right in that sweet spot, third song on the album, and I think it's got, although it's kind of sterile compared to other versions that we would hear in the future, listening to this in a bubble by itself, I think it's a good version. It's nice and clean, still kind of heavy, thin, but heavy, and it's got a wicked guitar solo on it.
A very strange guitar solo.
Yeah.
I think I'm on record saying that I don't really like this song that much.
Yep, you've said.
But regardless of that, I still think it fits perfectly within the space that it's in. I don't really have that much more to say about it.
All right, Rob.
I think to me, I can't remember if we said this on our show or not, that I feel like coming off of I Want You and Take Me, this puts the brakes on the album a little too early.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think the track placement of this is a song 7, maybe a song 6 or somewhere like there. I think the next song that we're going to talk about should have been the next song in there. I think if you had bumped a Ladies Room up a little bit, the flow of the album would have kept going, because usually you get through the first 3 tracks on an album typically where you're kind of setting the feel and the momentum of the album, and that's where after you get past track 3 or 4, maybe you start adding different elements of what the album overall is going to be. I think it's cool, but the speed that they were putting into the first 2 tracks, it comes to kind of an abrupt halt, bringing in that guitar and the cowbell till the song eventually picks up. It's a great tune. I just think the album placement, it should have been a little deeper into the album. Aside from that,
the song starts off maybe a little too broke down.
Yeah,
because it starts off with that, and then Peter comes in with the cowbell, and then they get kicked in, and then they have that little bit of extended time before Gene actually starts singing. Yeah, you might be right. You might be right that it would be better to stick the next track up to track 3. I could get on board with that. So we have I Want You, Take Me, and then we go to Ladies Room. So what do you think about Ladies Room? I'll let you talk first since I'm still eating.
Okay. I think this was another song I probably went on record saying that I didn't like that much either.
My beef with this whole album is yes, it rocks. But it rocks in such a sterile way. And the songs are maybe a beat or 2 or 3 beats a measure, a beat beats per measure, slower than they should be. I'm not saying pick up and grab it and run with it, because I think maybe even on a Live 2, it's a little too fast. I think there's some songs on Live 2, they're faster, but they're maybe a little too fast. There's a happy medium there somewhere. But when you listen to this and you listen to it on a good device, like a phone with good speakers on it or something like that, you hear a lot of space. You hear a lot of space in between the notes, and you hear a lot of just reverb, because they've got reverb filling in all the cracks where there's not extra production. There's not extra layers of guitars or extra thicker guitars or stuff like that, because the bricks are real. Although the wall is very solid, the bricks are real small, and there's a lot of concrete filler, a lot of reverb filler and stuff. And it comes off kind of sterile to me. It's still rock and roll, but it's kind of sterile, as the best way that I can really, it's the best word I can come up with for it. I mean, what do you think? I mean, other than not caring for the song.
I agree. It does sound like very it sounds like each instrument is kind of like separated into like its own like block of area within, I guess, the spectrum. And it's like it's almost like it feels like it's a song that hadn't been mastered in a way. It's like
Mhm.
everything kind of just feels like they're still their own separate things. And
Or they kept the production very basic.
Yeah.
Not a lot of overdubs, not a lot of
Yeah.
they didn't go the extra mile on a lot of things, and they didn't do things that creates these extra layers and layers and layers. And you can listen to that, and the reason why you said it's everything is like in its own little spectrum is because you listen to that, you can hear every single thing. You can hear the individual parts that each person is playing, because I think it is so separated because the individual tracks themselves are so thin, and there's not stuff there to extra recordings or extra effects to kind of fatten them up to where it fills in all
Well,
the gaps.
and sometimes whenever you're recording in a space that's really big, you set up your gates and stuff in a way that like you're only trying to capture like what this very most important thing that's coming out of the instrument.
Right.
And so if they're recording this in a theater you said it was?
Yeah, they recorded
Imagine
it.
how much other noise and bounce back and everything that they have to deal with
Yeah.
their microphones.
Yeah. So what do you think?
What I'm not trying to equate this to Phil Collins in the air tonight. Peter's cowbell and drum fill, that his little roll, the little do 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 do, like you said it perfectly. It's like it's its own separate thing. But in Phil Collins, the air tonight, that iconic fill that everybody air drums to, there's a presence that has, and it's just the
Mhm.
drums. There was nothing else there,
Right.
but you could tell it's part of the overall composition. This
Mhm.
feels like, okay, we're going to put the cowbell here, and then Peter, your drum fill is here, and then Gene, your bass line's going there. Nothing feels like it's connected as being one thing. It, like you said,
Right.
everything's very thin, and there's no breath in there. I think they went from one extreme with Destroyer, and they're like, no, we're going to strip this down to its bare bones. I don't know if that
Right.
was the best call. I mean, as muddy as hotter than hell is, there's still breath in
Right.
that, where there's nothing in here but just the channels of the music themselves.
Right. And I would like to think, since they recorded Peter in the bathroom, I would like to think when you hear that gorgeous reverb on that cowbell, that's the sound of that cowbell bouncing off of those ceramic tile walls and that ceramic floor. Those bathrooms are made like that, so they can basically just come in and hook the hose pipe into the little outlet on the wall and spray the thing down from floor to ceiling.
Mhm.
And so if you're going to have him in a bathroom, you don't need to add reverb to that cowbell. So in my little 9-year-old brain, it goes back to envisioning him in that bathroom, and that sound just do do do, and the sound that you hear is bouncing around in that bathroom. That's just real cool to think about. So speaking of Peter, so we talked about we were gonna make it. I Want You, Take Me, Ladies Room, Calling Dr. Love. We don't know where we're gonna stick it yet, but the last track on the first side is the Peter Criss Stan Pendridge. Peter always had Stan as a co-writer because Peter himself couldn't really write music, so he always had to have somebody to write music for him. But Baby Driver. Now, Baby Driver is a song that it took me a while I didn't appreciate Baby Driver when I was a kid. Even though I was a big Peter fan, I really didn't like this song. I didn't appreciate it for what until I got older. And then to me now, Baby Driver, it just kicks butt.
Oh yeah.
And I love how it starts. I just love that. Dun, 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 and it just keeps building. And it breaks in, and he's got cymbals. That first cymbal he hits, it sounds like it's like this big, like a freaking 32-inch crash or whatever. It just sounds so huge. So that's another one of those sounds that we've not heard before. And it goes through the whole thing. That riff that's on the and. I mean, and Peter's just singing along it like he's singing along to he's just singing along over it. I love that those bends and that riff. And Peter, man, that voice, he just sounds like he just got up after a night of drinking a a pint of Jack Daniels and smoking a carton of cigarettes, and just which you never know he might have, and just that just scratchy sandpaper,
Yep.
but soul and bluesy voice that he has. I mean, I've said it before and I said it again. I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but I think Peter Criss has one of the best voices in rock and roll. I really do. If Peter Criss would have been allowed to be more of a formidable person in Kiss and not kind of kept towards the back with Ace and along with Ace, he would have been one of those people, man, that people would have heard him and they'd been like, that's Peter Criss. I mean, not just Kiss fans, but people would have heard that voice.
Yeah.
Like him and Ace both.
Yeah, it's like
they have a distinguishable voice.
Yeah, it's like you hear it's like, oh, that's Elton John. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So, but Baby Driver, I think, is a great song. I think it's one of and you heard how different that sounded than Calling Dr. Love or Ladies Room just earlier. That song did not sound sterile. It sounded like it came out. It is a song that just stumbled out of a bar and is ready to bust you in the face because you looked at it the wrong way. That's exactly what that song sounds like to me. It's ready to pick a fight. And it sounds bad. It sounds dangerous. It does not sound sterile. And so
it definitely sounds like the Route 66 cruising song, you know?
Yeah.
100% is what I imagine whenever I hear this song.
Yeah.
But I do like it. I think it's grown on me a lot since our last review. And I quite like it a lot.
Yeah.
I know this was one of our favorites off the album, and I know Nico said it, and so did I, that I think Universal was the one producing the movie, but this should have been in the movie.
Yes.
Baby Driver. I'm like, you have the title sequence right there in the song.
Were you guys watching the newer one?
No. Well, but one from probably 3 or 4 years ago, which whatever. That one. Yeah. This should have been in that movie because it was all based around a guy that had the ringing in his ears, so he was trying to get a playlist. And I was watching it going, oh, please scroll find Kiss, but Gene and Paul were probably like, no, you can't use our song. But anyway, I love the song, and I feel like this is Peter's middle finger to whoever.
Yeah. It's Peter and Stan Pendridge, but they, But Kiss does license their songs every once in a while. I think I talked about it in one of my videos. I can't remember what it was, but I was watching an episode of The Blacklist a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you told me about this.
And there's an open sequence that has New York Groove playing. And I'm not the biggest fan of New York Groove, but when that sequence started and it started playing New York Groove, I was like, yeah,
it was such a big point for him that he made a point to come and get me and show me whenever I was still living here.
Yeah.
There was a couple years back, I think probably during COVID, there was a CBS. They were doing all their fall lineup, and I can't remember if it was Detroit Rock City. Maybe it wasn't Detroit Rock City. It could have been probably Rock and Roll All Night or whatever. But Kiss was in that opening sequence. I probably got the video still on my phone, where I told my wife, rewind that. I think that's Kiss. She's like, you're going to tape a CBS commercial just because it has Kiss in it? I said, yes, because but that's what we do. But I was surprised.
That's what we do. We're nerds, but that's what we do.
But what a great way to end the album. And I think sometimes, the end of the album and the side back in the days where you had this pulls you into I want to flip this thing over and I want to hear how we start side 2 off. And, I think it works really well.
Yeah. So here's what I think. And I want to pose this to the fellow producers. So we got, I Want You, Take Me, Ladies Room, and then we have a Spot, and then we have Baby Driver. And then we flip the album. We're going to start with Love 'Em, Leave 'Em, and then Mr. Speed. What about if we took a song off of side 2, if we were to move Calling Dr. Love to side 2, what song would you move into the number 4 spot of side 1?
Number 2.
Number 2? You want to get Mr. Speed on the first side of the album.
Yes, the sooner the better.
Yeah.
The
Mr.
sooner the
Speed.
better.
Yeah.
I
know
honestly,
It's their best song.
all right, so let's think about this. I want you take me, ladies' room, Mr. Speed. So how this?
You know what you almost end up with, though? You almost end up with an Animalize where the side B of the album is very weak
Yeah,
with a bright spot. While I agree with everything you said about Mr. Speed, we haven't even reviewed it yet. I want to get to that song earlier. Then that would make me go, okay, then we've got to pull Take Me to side 2, or we gotta have something as equally as good, because we're gonna end up with See You in Your Dreams and Hard Luck Woman. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard choice. I think Mr. Speed should be farther up in the mix. Like maybe it should kick off side 2 of the album, which would make it track.
I would agree with that.
well, that's
100%.
okay. Yeah, this is you're running. You just took a step down the path that I was thinking. I want you to take me, ladies' room, Love 'Em, Leave 'Em,
Okay.
Baby Driver. So let's talk about, since Love and Leave 'Em is the first song on side 1, and we're thinking about moving it, or first song on side 2, and we're thinking about moving it to side 1. Love 'Em and Leave 'Em by Gene. What do you think about Love 'Em and Leave 'Em? Love 'Em and Leave 'Em is another one that I tell you what they did do on this album, that they didn't do a whole lot. They did a lot of this weird, not time stuff, just playing things weird. Like, for example, that beginning, what? I mean, come on. I mean,
No.
I'm just saying that is so unlike anything that they have done.
Yeah.
You got 4 people doing like something. It's like I think the Plasmatics did it one time. They made a song where they recorded a song and they could not hear each other. They could only hear themselves. But that's almost sounds like to me is those 4 guys can't hear each other. Because you got Paul and Gene doom doom on the and Peter just randomly throwing in I mean, it's like, but then they all hit. They're all together. That ba 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 ba.
It does sound like they just put him in a studio at blindfolds, and then they're like started the metronome, and they're like, go.
They just started pointing. Okay, you now you
Yeah.
you
You play. Now you.
What do you play? I don't care.
Just play something.
Anything.
Play something. We're gonna put it all together at the end.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah.
Fix it post.
What does
Great
that
take,
mean?
guys. Great take. We can fix it in post.
Oh no.
I like Love 'Em and Leave 'Em. I've always, the only thing I don't like about any Kiss song, or any song for that matter, is a song that just has a chorus that just either repeats the same thing over and over and over and over and over and doesn't really have any substance to it. Which, I mean, if they just repeat the title of the song over and over and over, that's one of the beefs I have with songs like Love Gun, Love 'Em and Leave 'Em. I like songs like Shock Me, make me feel better. Shock me, put on your black leather. I mean, I like songs that have more than just the title of the song in the chorus.
Mhm.
And if the name of the song isn't even in the chorus and just some random line of a verse in the song, that's even better. I know that was real big in the 90s, but Kiss did that from time to time, not very often, but
I think it's less about how we get the names for our songs, just like more that like naming conventions change. Because like in the generation that I was growing up, like the longer and more random and more capitalization that your name for your song had, the better. Like there's literally a song, like there's all kinds of songs.
Tripping on a Hole in a Paper Heart.
Tripping on a Hole in a Paper Heart.
But then you had albums like Poison. I'm not Poison, but Pearl Jam that put out songs like Oceans, Once, Jeremy.
Or you've got groups like Seven Dust. They release a song called Waffle. You're like, what the heck is Waffle?
So love them, leave them, and I love that it's love them and leave them, like not them, it's love
Hmm.
They
and
couldn't
leave
afford the extra 2 letters.
Yeah. So love them, leave them. It's one of those songs that, like I said, it's grown on me. I don't, and I think the recording sounds just like any of the other recordings except for Baby Driver. It's the guitar. I think it's the guitar is mostly that it's like real sterile on this album. They're thin,
Which is a shame because it's a rock album.
right?
Hmm.
But love them, leave them. Y'all agree with moving it to track number 4 on side 1?
I'd say, yeah.
I'd say, yeah. One of my favorite parts of this from watching the Kiss Extreme close up, and it was on Don Kirshner's rock concert when Ace is going into his solo where he's pointing at the fretboard or whatever. Oh, that was so cool seeing that for the first time, going, oh, that's such a cool move. And then he would do that. He's done that forever. But seeing it for the first time, I was like, he's just pointing at it and making the guitar do whatever before you understand. Like, no, it's his left hand, idiot,
Yeah. He's pointing, and all he's doing is doing some hammer-on or some bends.
Yeah.
That's some good showmanship right
It
there.
is some good showmanship.
Because the people that don't play guitar think that's fancy.
Ace was the king of showmanship. That's swaying back and forward and the staggering around and dropping to his knees and the puckering of the lips when he was playing. And Ace was a heck of a showman. I mean, he was. Most of the time he was probably drunk, but he was a heck of a showman. So that means we would start and so that means we're going to have to find where we're going to put Calling Dr. Love. I don't want to start the second side with it. So I think we start with
I think
what
do you think we start with?
Mr. Speed.
Mr. Speed? I think we started with Mr. Speed because it's like the perfect like sucker punch to start the second side of your Return rock album, you know?
Yeah. Mr. Speed is one of the greatest Kiss songs that never got its due.
It's my favorite Kiss song for those. I'm sure most people on the channel who know me know, but yeah, it's my favorite Kiss song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mr. Speed is the song that has the horrible mix edit in it. So
it's a damn shame.
Coming out of the solo where Paul goes, ow, and it starts that does that a couple times, and then all of a sudden he goes, I don't care, and it goes and it starts into that rhythm. They get a couple it's out, and then all of a sudden you hear it go
It's so terrible.
It's like, oh crap.
That's why it feels like some of these on here are literally one take songs, or like maybe not one take, but they jam through them a couple times and then they got the groove down and they're like, all right,
I'm going here.
Let's go.
I record. That's the take.
And then after
Next.
that's money, and they put it out the door.
Yeah.
But it's coming off the solo, man. It's bad. It's like it's bad.
It's very noticeable.
It's very noticeable.
Which is like,
and once you hear it, you won't be able to unhear it.
Yeah, and it's not like this is a mistake that's on like this album over here, like your one from the 70s that's original. It's like, no, this is the version that I streamed from YouTube Premium
Yeah.
a couple weeks, not long ago.
Yeah.
Why is it still there?
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there.
And especially when you go back through the 2014 remasters or the 1997 CD remasters that somebody didn't go in, you have the ability to remaster it, fix that issue.
Yeah. But anyway, I still think it's a great song.
Yeah.
All right.
Moving forward.
And that's Sean Delaney, of course, with Paul Stanley. I think sometimes when Kiss does really great things, they do it with a little help from their friends. So next, we would have either See You in Your Dreams, or do we stick Calling Dr. Love here? Coming off of Mr. Speed, that vibe.
Calling Dr. Love would probably fit nicely after
Yeah.
Mr. Speed.
So
You're
Mr.
kind
Speed,
of in a nice little mid-tempo. The song's not too drastic from one another.
yeah.
Because
And
there's a couple.
It fits the tempo versus the songs on the front a little bit better too.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because Mr. Speed, and then Calling Dr. Love. You need my love, baby. It's a little slower. Bang.
Little
Yeah.
Maybe a couple beats slower, but still,
But it's coming afterwards.
it's
so-
coming after, right?
Yeah, but it's not like
Um,
coming after "Take Me." That's here and here beat wise.
Right. And so we see something we don't see very often on older albums. Instead of having two Paul songs in a row and one Gene song, we have a Paul song with Mr. Speed, a Gene song with Calling Dr. Love, and then another Gene song with See You in Your Dreams. So Gene didn't have a co-writer on any of his songs. No, he didn't. So and Ace has no co-writing efforts on this album. See You in Your Dreams. What do y'all think about this version?
Man, why does that just sound like a heavier Beach Boys song?
It sounds like
Oh, yeah.
it sounds like somebody remixed "Love 'Em and Leave 'Em."
Yeah.
It does sound like
It does.
It sounds like you took "Love 'Em and Leave 'Em" and just rearranged a few of the pieces together, and you made "See You in Your Dreams."
Yeah.
I have a hard time when that plays, not thinking it's "Love 'Em and Leave 'Em" for like 2 or 3 seconds, and going like if it's just on a shuffle, and you'll go, "Oh, that's Love 'Em." Nope, it's not "Love 'Em, Leave 'Em." See You tonight, or "See You in Your
Right.
Dreams." Rather.
Right.
Here's my thing. Like, if you're gonna make an album and you're gonna release two songs that are gonna just seem like they're so close, why not just make it a 9-song album?
I don't know.
And
Well,
that's what
that's what
that's
they
what
did.
we did
They
on
made
our
it-
show.
They
We
made
take
it a
all the
9 song.
albums and make them 9 songs. This was a unanimous off the album.
Mhm.
The better version of this is on Gene's solo album, and even there, I don't care for it that much, but it's a better version.
I slow clap you.
I see why you two get along.
I slow clap you on the better version being on Gene Simmons' solo album because it's not
Yeah.
popular opinion, but it is the truth.
It is. I feel like this is like Gene has gold with Dr. Love. Ladies' Room is really good. Love 'Em and Leave 'Em. And he kind of bunted this one. He had a foul tip, and they put it on the album, in my opinion. And he had a chance to go, you know what would I have done better with this song? And it wound up on his solo album.
Yeah, dude, every time somebody says, "Oh, Gene Simmons messed up when he recorded See You in Your Dreams" or whatever," I'm like, yeah, he messed up and made the version on Rock and Roll Over look terrible and look as bad as it really is because
To me, the
the version on his solo album is so much better.
The mess up is, why are you re-recording a song that you already did on a previous album? Just write a new song.
Like
That
2
being
years before.
Yeah, 2 years before. Like you're out of ideas when Gene writes a billion songs. That
Right.
being said, you go, why didn't you do this on Rock and Roll Over?
So, See You in Your Dreams, like I said, probably my least favorite song on this album, but still, I believe it belongs here. But he spoiled me with his solo album version.
Mhm.
It's one of the better songs on the album. So now we have Rod Stewart, Peter Criss singing Paul Stanley's Hard Luck Woman. Paul Stanley wrote a song for Peter and threw him a bone because this was supposed to be the Beth Part 2
Beth
follow up.
I remember quite liking this song when we went through our original, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah. Yep, Hard Luck Woman, very acoustic.
Let me know. Okay, I wanted to listen to the double platinum version first. You already
Okay.
but I wanted to make a note of something I just now kind of probably realized of like, why do they have to make Gene's bass, unless this is just like a 70s stylistic thing, but why do they make Gene's bass have to sound like a flub like the entire album? Yeah, it sounds almost more like a wind instrument.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was a 70s thing because you go listen to other 70s recordings and some of the bass in those recordings sounds really good. I think it just mostly has to do with it was a creative decision that Kiss made on this. Because you, like I said, you just go a couple years later and you listen to the bass on Dynasty, and the bass on Dynasty sounds amazing.
Probably rocks your car.
The bass on Dynasty sounds amazing. It does. Whenever it hits, it's funny, whenever I'm going through my playlist, I just go to the Kiss playlist on Apple Music and I just shuffle it. And it's really, it's a real eye opener whenever you go from a song off of an album like this, where it is very thin, and then that bass line of "Sure Knows Something" kicks in, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's almost like sometimes it feels like, things are recorded and like it's like this is the amount of like hearing that I have able to do, and it's like something that's recorded on newer, better, I guess you could say, means. It's like it feels like the space is just more like it's more open.
So, Hard Luck Woman, do you think here's a dilemma we have as co-producers? I think it's where it is. We got Paul in front of us saying, I wrote this song for Rod Stewart, but you know what? I don't know if I want to give it to Rod Stewart, and Gene's telling me we should give it to Peter, so we could possibly have a Beth number 2, win another People Choice Award. As producers, do we look him in his eyeball sockets and say, no, Paul, you sing this, Peter's got Baby Driver, that's all he needs? Or do we let him give it to Peter and let Peter sing it? What would this song being sung by Paul Stanley sound like? Or is it better to have Peter sing it? What do you guys think?
It sounds off. If you listen to the MTV Unplugged, I know, Paul, they were doing it through the convention tour without Peter, but hearing Paul sing it, something doesn't quite sound right. That, I don't know if that's just time over 40 some odd years, almost 50 some odd years later, of having heard Peter do it. Even now, and they would do it in some type of acoustic setting, I'm always going, but just have Eric sing it. Eric's got that type of voice, and when Paul sings it, like you wrote it for Rod Stewart, who has that type of voice that
Right.
Peter has, it just doesn't fit Paul's register. He's trying to get into a spot where his voice doesn't naturally go.
Yeah, because
so
Paul's more like, if never I met you.
yeah,
You know,
it's like Garth
it's-
Brooks when he did it on Kiss My Ass.
yeah,
Sounded perfect doing it. That's
Yeah.
that's that type of voice to
Right.
do it. It's not Paul. So I think that was the right call, that somebody said, hey, Peter should do this one, or don't put it on the album.
right. So what do you think about Hard Luck Woman?
I feel like that, like, anytime, I know that this might be a slightly different conversation, but like I feel like anytime that like I hear Paul Stanley sing over like one of their slower songs, I feel like Never Ending Story is about to like pop up somewhere. So like I don't think that his voice fits in like a song that's like soft in the context of like the way that this music is written, because generally when he goes to do a softer song, it's more kind of magical, I guess it would be, or like he's like the romance guy, you know.
But Hard Luck Woman, I think he did the right thing. If he would have came to me with this and said, I'd been like, let me hear you sing it. Let me hear Peter sing it. Yeah, you need to give it to Peter. It sounds better giving it to Peter. But I'd tell him, this is not going to be Beth. This is not going to be. That was a lightning in the bottle. It's, you know what I mean? It was a hit for them. I mean, it was a minor hit, but it was not a repeat of Beth.
Yeah, but I don't think that, like, I always feel like you end up like a little bit chasing the tail of the dragon. Like whenever you try and intentionally chase after those types of things.
Right. Yeah. No, you just continue to write songs organically and hope that you are writing the next thing that will catch the lightning in the bottle.
Yeah.
Not trying to recatch a new lightning bolt in the same bottle.
Right. Exactly. So, but I think it stays on the album. I think it's perfect where it is now. The final track on the album is my favorite track on this album, and they saved the best for last, Making Love.
And they absolutely prove that Sean Delaney is needed for them to make a good song.
Once again, Sean Delaney and Paul Stanley, the 3 songs that Sean was involved on, Making Love, Mr. Speed, and Take Me. I mean, come on. You got 3 singles right there. Making Love. I think it's a tragedy that Making Love was never released as a single. So Making Love, to end the album, what do you like about this song?
It's got to be the starter or the finisher, and I mean, like, it's definitely the heavy hitter. And I think I'd rather hit a home run on the 9th inning than the first one.
My God, could you imagine if they would have started Rock and Roll Over with Making Love?
They wouldn't have. They would have immediately made the rest of the album
Lame.
lame.
I see both sides of that. I think I said at the top of the show that I really wish this started, and I almost recant myself sometimes getting to the end. I've been to plenty of baseball games where the bottom of the ninth and the home team have like just hit a home run. You want that climactic ending, but what makes this album so special that if you just let the album repeat, you just get this, like I said, the top of the show, this circle thing happening with the album. You're going right back into I Want You, and the album almost makes sense that it does feel like this is track 1, track 2, or track 1, track 10, that the album just kind of completes this journey.
Right.
And I don't know. It works really
Very
well.
metaphorical. It is a circle.
And so we talked about that. And so then they come with you, they come and they go, hey, this is what we're thinking about. This artwork, this conceptual artwork is what we're thinking about our cover being. What do you think? I'd say ship it.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I love about it is people always talk about that Gene and Paul put themselves on the top. Gene and Paul always puts himself on the top. Well, if you don't like that, then just put it in the bin the other way around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they're on the top on one, and then on the back side they're on the bottom. So
The cool thing
really rotate.
The cool thing about the album cover is when I'm pulling the vinyl out and I'm playing it, I inadvertently end up always going, all right, which end is the slit?
Right. Yeah.
That it just works in any direction.
Some people have argued that this is the best Kiss album cover ever made. What do y'all think? Do you think it's the best album cover ever made?
They're counting all of them.
Yeah, all Kiss album covers, this is the best, is what a lot of people say. What do you think?
No,
I don't think so.
Didn't we already do this video?
We've done. Listen. I think it's like my 5th time going through the catalog. So,
I'm trying to scramble to see where we have.
It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite album cover.
It's not mine, but
it's not mine.
I probably like Love Gun better than this album cover. But Love Gun is still probably my 2nd favorite album cover. My most favorite album cover is the cover for Kiss Alive 2, and it's just because it's not just the cover, it's the gatefold and the back cover and the pictures and everything. Those are the most iconic. This is iconic, and the cover of Destroyer is iconic, and the cover of Love Gun's iconic, but Alive 2 is up there.
Here you go. So, Reader, we've only reviewed 5 albums on the show so far. I actually have Hot in the Shade as one of my favorite album covers, Rock and Roll Over, Destroyer, Crazy Nights, Revenge. But I think it's the most iconic. It was on the floor of MTV Unplugged, that of all the album covers they could have they chose that one.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny story was MTV rolled it up and threw it in the trash. Paul Stanley is walking out and goes, hey, if that doesn't go there, pulled it out of the trash and took it with him.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's in the Kiss warehouse now.
Yeah.
I don't think we would have had to do, if we were to produce this album for Kiss, I don't think we would have had to do too much work. We would have moved the tracks around. We would basically moved Calling Dr. Love around the way that we did and moved some things around, maybe switched a couple tracks, but for the most part left things where they were. We would have fattened those guitars up, maybe get them to put a couple more layers of guitars in there, and just do the rest of the songs the way you did Baby Driver and songs like Making Love, because Baby Driver and Making Love, they don't sound sterile. But just some of the songs they almost sound like, and I don't know how long they took to record Rock and Roll Over. That could have been another thing too, because you remember they got pulled off a tour to record this album.
They started from September to October.
So yeah,
2 months.
2 months. 2 months to record.
Wow.
Released in November.
Yeah.
So September, October, released in November.
Yeah.
So a month spent on post-production.
Yeah.
About.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that could be why it sounds the way it sounds, because they recorded it in less than 2 months, because that's just assuming that they had the whole month of
So-
September and the whole month of October, and they might not have.
They just made sure that the bangers were bangers, and they just said everything else.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So, Stephen, thanks for coming back home every once in a while.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know people ask about Stephen all the time. They ask, and this is a series that I wanted to have. Stephen's like, "Hey, let's get together and record a video." I said, "I got the perfect series," and I let him pick. I let him pick what he wanted, what we wanted to do.
Yep, I literally came in and I was like, rock and roll over.
Yeah,
Nice.
I honestly thought you were going to want to come in and do either the Elder or Rock and Roll Over.
I thought the Elder would be too stereotypical of me. I wanted to be a little. You know which 3 it would have been for me, 100% though.
It would either been this one
The Elder?
or Alive.
No.
No,
Carnival
of Souls. Carnival of Souls.
Brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
You maybe we can do that one next time.
Yeah, I'm a big Carnival of Souls fan.
Me too.
Yeah,
Ditto.
Rob is too.
Ditto.
Revenge,
Ditto.
Carnival of Souls. Well, that's all I got for this one. I think that we would have not changed too much, but I think we still would have made a good album.
I have one overarching note for the whole thing.
Okay.
Hire Sean Delaney as a co-writer on every song.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was doing something right during this time.
Yeah, he was doing okay stuff with their songs at the point. So,
Yeah.
I
well,
agree.
is that everything?
That's everything, Rob. Appreciate you coming and sitting in with us and
Awesome.
getting to hang out with you on this Sunday night. And this will be out in a couple weeks. My next video, it's the video that would have come out before this one. I fixed this leg pin in this Gene Simmons doll that's right here. And I show that's actually a delicate process, and I show people how they can do it if they have a Miko
cool.
doll that has a broke knee pin. If you got a Kiss doll with a broke leg, I can show you how to fix it. And then me and you will be back in another video real soon, because we're going to see what we can do with Peter's album, man. See, we can get the duct tape ready.
God help you.
When we start stripping away the horns and the background singers, we got to try to figure out what we're going to put in its place. Rob, give your handles where people can find you.
You can find us on Twitter at RBTE Podcast. We do some stuff on YouTube, but we like to do preview clips. We've got something big in the works, and that'll be a full episode. More on that later, but you can look up Right Between the Eyes on YouTube. We're on Facebook at Right Between the Eyes, and we're mostly an audio show, so any of your podcatchers, Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff, Stitcher, we're on there. Just look up Right Between the Eyes. 3 generations of Kiss fans.
All right, that's all we got for this, and guys, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Go, baby, drive.
Go. I love that.